Good evening. It is Friday, February 17th, 2026. From the vantage point of the space domain, the view is certainly changing, and it's changing fast. We're here today to discuss a series of events that suggest we're pivoting from, well, an age of exploration to an age of industrialization. I'm your host, and joining me is our expert analyst.
It's a pleasure to be here, and you're right. The dispatches from the last 2 weeks have been significant. The entire timeline for the space economy feels like it's being rewritten in real time.
It really does. The headline on the wire is, "The Space Economy Boom. Trillions at Stake Beyond Earth." But before we get into the details, we do want to acknowledge our sponsor, ProWave AI.
And we should also be clear, as always, about the source of our intelligence. This entire briefing we're about to discuss was generated by Stylo News.
That's the AI-powered news application. And for anyone new, it's important to understand what that actually means.
It is. Stylo News is the consumer version of a much larger platform, Stylo Intel Ops. That's a tool designed for very serious enterprise operations. We're talking government, military, high-level business strategy.
So when you listen to this, you're getting access to insights from the same grade of intelligence tool that global decision makers are using, which gives us, I think, a unique perspective.
A definite advantage.
Our mission for this deep dive is to review the last fortnight in spaceflight. We've seen logistical shifts at NASA with Artemis, some major operational successes from SpaceX, and a really massive strategic pivot from both Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos.
A pivot on the moon versus Mars debate, which is huge. It's a collision of technical reality, the simple physics of rockets, and grand strategic vision, delays on one side and historic milestones on the other.
So let's start with that operational status report. The big story a couple of weeks ago was Artemis II. This is supposed to be NASA's first crewed lunar flyby since, 1972?
That's right, since the Apollo era, and the original flight manifest had it launching in early February. But, well, in this line of work, physics and the weather always get the final say.
And they've announced a delay.
A significant one. The new launch window is now March 6th through March 11th.
So a delay of about a month. That doesn't sound like a lot in the grand scheme of things,
Yeah.
but I imagine for spaceflight logistics, it's a big deal. What happened?
It was a convergence of two things, really, environmental and technical. First, the weather. Kennedy Space Center had an extreme cold snap
In Florida.
and that violated the launch criteria. These vehicles, especially the SLS, have very strict thermal limits. You just can't fuel or launch if it gets too cold.
Is that about the fuel itself, or is it a structural thing?
It's a materials issue. It's about seals and gaskets. We all learned some hard lessons back in the 80s about O-rings and cold weather. They get brittle, and when you're pumping millions of pounds of cryogenic propellant, a brittle seal is a risk you cannot take.
Right.
And that leads directly to the second issue, the more technical one. It happened during what they call the wet dress rehearsal on February 3rd.
Before you go on, can you just define wet dress rehearsal for our listeners?
Of course, it's a full simulation of launch day. They roll the rocket out, power everything up, and they actually load the propellants, the liquid hydrogen and oxygen.
So it's wet because the fuel is liquid.
Exactly. They run the countdown right down to the last few seconds. It's the final exam before the real thing. And it was during that exam that they found the fault.
A leak.
Precisely, a hydrogen fuel leak right at a connection point. And this, unfortunately, has been a recurring challenge for the space launch system. You have to understand, hydrogen is the smallest molecule in the universe. It is incredibly good at escaping.
So even with all our technology, we're still fighting basic chemistry.
We are. The NASA administrator, Jared Isaacman, and the management chairman, John Honeycutt, they made the call. Safety over schedule.
A wise decision.
Yeah.
With 4 astronauts' lives on the line.
Absolutely. So on-pad repairs are happening now. The crew Wiseman, Glover, Koch, and Hansen, they were briefly out of quarantine, but they're still in training, waiting for that March window.
Okay, so while the government side was dealing with those delays, the commercial sector was telling a very different story just down the road.
A very stark contrast. On February 13th, SpaceX launched Crew 12, a picture-perfect mission.
And this is an important one, right? A replacement crew.
Critical. It was a replacement following a medical evacuation from Crew 11, so the ISS was running on a skeleton crew. But the truly historic part of this launch wasn't the going up, it was the booster coming down.
I saw the footage. They landed the Falcon 9 booster back on land at landing zone 40.
Correct, which is right next to the launch pad. Now, historically, for crewed missions, that booster lands on a drone ship hundreds of miles out in the ocean.
Why the change? What's the significance of landing it back at the Cape?
It signifies margin, performance margin. To get a booster to fly all the way back to where it started, you need to save a lot of fuel for what's called a boost back burn. It's actually less efficient for payload, but much more efficient for logistics.
So the fact they could do it means the rocket is performing even better than designed.
It shows they've optimized everything to the point where they have excess performance, they have the fuel to spare, and this was a first for a human launch from Florida. It's a huge step in their logistics. It's so much faster to refurbish a rocket that lands next door versus one you have to drag back from the middle of the ocean.
It's incredible how routine they're making it look, and the crew for this mission is also very international.
It's a truly multinational team. Jessica Meir and Jack Hathaway from NASA, Sophie Adnot from the ESA, and Andrei Fedyaev from Roscosmos.
A good reminder that despite everything happening down here, the ISS is still a beacon of cooperation.
It really is. They're on an 8-month mission studying human physiology and, very interestingly, running lunar landing simulations.
And that focus on the moon is the perfect transition to the biggest story of the last 2 weeks, the strategic pivot. For years, the narrative has been Mars, Mars, Mars.
Boots on Mars, yes.
But in early February 2026, we saw this massive realignment from Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos.
This is the moment where that long-term vision slams into short-term pragmatism. Elon Musk has officially shifted SpaceX's priority. It's no longer a sprint to Mars.
So what is it now?
The new goal is to establish a self-growing human city on the moon within 10 years.
That is a profound change. For so long, the moon was seen as a distraction for SpaceX. What's behind this? Is he admitting Mars is just too hard right now?
It's a calculation. It's all logistics. When you look at the math of building a supply chain, the moon is just a much better business case for the near term.
How so?
Travel time. To the moon, it's about 3 days. To Mars, you're looking at 6 months, best case. But the launch windows are the real killer.
Right, you can't just go whenever you want.
Not to Mars. You can only launch every 26 months when the planets align. For the moon, you can launch roughly every 10 days.
Let's just pause on that. A 2-year wait for Mars versus a 2-week wait for the moon.
Exactly. And if your goal is a self-growing city, you need a constant, reliable flow of supplies and people. You can't build anything quickly with a 2-year gap between shipments. If a critical life support system breaks on Mars, help is years away. On the moon, a replacement part can be there next week.
So Mars isn't off the table completely.
No, not abandoned, just deferred. Serious colonization efforts are now on a 5 to 7 year timeline. But we also have to look at the political and financial pressures here.
What are the outside forces?
Well, sources are indicating heavy influence from the Trump administration. They want a clear lunar legacy that aligns with Artemis. They want tangible wins on the moon, not theoretical progress on Mars decades away.
And the money.
Investor pressure. SpaceX is moving toward a huge IPO. And the markets, well, they prefer a viable near-term revenue model. A lunar city with government contracts is a much safer bet than a high-risk Mars venture.
It sounds like a shift from a crusade to a sustainable business. And it's not just Musk. Jeff Bezos and Blue Origin are making a similar move.
Their pivot might be even more dramatic. Blue Origin has paused their New Shepard space tourism flights.
That's their main public-facing program.
It is, the one that sends celebrities to the edge of space. And it's on hold now for at least 2 years.
Why would they do that?
Yeah.
Why halt your only commercial product?
It shows you how high the stakes are. They are shifting every single resource, their people, their money, their focus, to fulfilling that $3.4 billion NASA contract for the Artemis lunar lander.
So they're moving from space tourism to
serious infrastructure. They're trying to become a real competitor to SpaceX for building the hardware that gets us to the moon. They realize they can't do both at once.
So the 2 richest men on the planet are now in a head-to-head race to build out the moon. But it's not just about habitats. There's a digital angle to this that gets us to the trillions in our headline.
This is the part of the report I find most fascinating. The merger of physical space infrastructure with the digital economy. We're seeing a convergence of SpaceX and xAI, Musk's artificial intelligence company.
You're talking about putting data centers in orbit.
Exactly. The plan is to use Starship's massive lift capability to put huge server farms in space.
The question everyone will ask is, why? We have plenty of desert on Earth for server farms. What's the advantage of putting them in a vacuum?
The answer is energy and heat. On Earth, AI data centers are eating up a terrifying percentage of our power grid, and they generate enormous amounts of heat. In orbit, you have near constant free solar power.
You bypass the grid entirely.
You do. Now, the heat is a major engineering problem. In a vacuum, you can't use fans. You have to use giant radiators to beam the heat away as infrared radiation. But if they solve that, you have unlimited energy with zero land cost. It's about energy independence for AI.
So the growth of the space economy becomes directly tied to the growth of the AI economy.
It's a self-reinforcing cycle, and it seems the U.S. government is getting the legal framework ready to support it.
The NASA Reauthorization Act of 2026.
That's it. The House Science, Space, and Technology Committee just passed it. And the key provision in that act authorizes NASA to simply procure deep space transportation services from commercial companies beyond Artemis V.
The word services there feels very important.
It's the whole game. In the old days, NASA paid a contractor to build a rocket that NASA owned. This new legislation makes the shift permanent. NASA is just buying a ride. The company owns the rocket. It legally cements SpaceX and Blue Origin as independent operators, not just government contractors.
I want to bring this back down to Earth for a moment. While we're talking about orbital data centers, this all has real, tangible impacts right now.
It does. In Florida, on the Space Coast, the reactivation of Pad 39B and the success of Landing Zone 40 are driving a boom in tourism and jobs. It feels a bit like the Apollo era again.
And in Texas.
It's more complicated in Texas. Starbase is ramping up for Starship V3 testing in March. And while that's great for the local economy, it's also happening right next to a wildlife refuge. So you have this classic conflict between industrial progress and environmental concerns.
Zooming out to the international level, it's clear this is also a competition.
It is. And China is what the Pentagon would call the pacing threat. While the U.S. is pivoting, China just successfully launched a reusable experimental spacecraft. But the key number to watch is the year 2030.
Why 2030?
That's the deadline Beijing has set for its own crewed lunar landing. That's just 4 years from now. It's an aggressive timeline, but they keep hitting their marks. And that deadline is driving the urgency here in the U.S. It's why the administration and NASA are pushing so hard for the moon now.
The new space race.
Yeah.
And where does Russia fit in?
Russia is playing a very pragmatic dual-track game. Roscosmos is still a key partner on the ISS, as we saw with Crew 12, but at the same time, they're conducting their own military satellite launches from Plesetsk. They're cooperating where they have to and securing their own interests where they can.
And our allies in Europe and Canada.
They are deeply integrated with the U.S. and Artemis. They're supportive of this pivot to the moon because, frankly, their national space programs are tied to its success. They're providing key hardware, astronauts, but they don't have the independent launch capability to get to the moon themselves.
Through the Stylo platform, we could look at sentiment analysis from social media.
Mm-hmm.
How is the public taking all of this in?
Overall, the sentiment is cautiously optimistic. There's a lot of support for the pragmatic shift to the moon. The consensus seems to be that Mars is a bridge too far right now, but the moon feels achievable.
Any concerns?
Yes, there's a definite threat of concern about the concentration of power. When humanity's timeline in space is being set by two private individuals, it raises questions about dependency. But from a U.S. perspective, the dominant feeling is national pride. In China, the narrative is all about their independent achievements and technological sovereignty.
Okay, looking ahead, what should we be watching for in the immediate future?
March 2026 is the critical month. First, the Artemis II launch. We'll see if those hydrogen leak pairs hold. That window opens on March 6th.
And if they miss it?
It complicates the whole schedule. Second, we're watching Texas for the Starship V3 orbital test flight. This is absolutely critical. Starship is the lunar lander for Artemis III. If V3 has a major failure, the goal of landing in 2028 is in real jeopardy.
And longer term.
I'd keep an eye on those space-based data centers. If SpaceX and XAI actually start launching hardware, that creates a new industry overnight. And watch Blue Origin. Now that tourism is paused, they have to show results on their lander. The quiet time is over.
It really feels like we're moving out of the experimental phase of this new space age and into the industrial one.
That is the perfect way to frame it. We're moving from planting flags to, metaphorically, pouring concrete. The foundations for the next 50 years are being laid right now.
And trillions of dollars are moving with it. This isn't science fiction anymore. It's a construction site. Before we close, I want to come back to the tool that made this deep dive possible.
Right. As we said at the start, this analysis was generated with Stylo News. It's an app you can get for your phone or your computer.
And the value here is that you can build your own personal intelligence briefs, just like this one we've walked through. It pulls from hundreds of traditional news sources, from X, and gives you a coherent picture.
It gives you the kind of situational awareness an intelligence officer would have, but for topics you care about. You get the dossier instead of just the noise.
If that sounds like something you could use, you can get AI-powered news on demand and build your own deep dives by subscribing at www.stylonews.com.
I'd highly recommend it. It's the only way I can keep up with the world moving this fast.
Thank you all for listening to this deep dive. We hope we helped clarify some of the massive shifts happening just over our heads.
It's always a pleasure to connect the dots.
If there's a topic you'd like us to tackle in the future, please let us know. You can follow Stylo News on your favorite social media platform and send us your requests. Until next time, keep looking up.